So guys, here you can see I have divided different components of framework into 6 parts. So let's understand how we can explain each component in an interview. Step 1 is language. Start from very basic, the language which you have used in your framework. So in our Selenium project, we are using Java language. Step 2 is type of framework. So we are using TDD, that is test driven development approach, by using quick start template of Maven, and all our dependencies are defined in pom.xml. Step 3 is design pattern. Explain about page object model. So as per the page object model, we have maintained a class for every web page. Each web page has a separate class file, and that class holds the functionality and elements of that particular web page, and separate classes are defined for every individual test. Step 4 is reusable component. Now once basic is done, explain about reusable components in your framework. So first one is properties file. So this file stores the common information which can be accessed throughout the framework, such as on which browser you want to run, your application URL, your user credentials. Keeping these details in config file makes it easy to maintain and use. Next is base class. So base class deals with all the common functions used by all the pages. So this class is responsible for loading configurations from property files, initializing your Webdriver and implicit weights. Next is utility class. So utility class stores and handles the functions which are repetitive in nature, such as weights, capturing screenshot, accessing data from Excel, sending email, which can commonly be used in the entire framework. Step 5 is screenshot and test data. Move on to explaining how you are capturing screenshot and maintaining your test data. So for screenshots, we have used listeners class in our framework to capture screenshot on any failure, and these screenshots will be stored in separate folder, and which can be further added to your output report. Coming to test data, using Apache PY, we are accessing all our test data through the Excel sheets. Step 6, continuous testing. Last but not the least, explain about continuous testing. So first is testng. So this is used to achieve assertions, grouping and parallel execution. Explain why you are using testng grouping, so that you can run smoke, sanity and regression test cases as per your need. So let's take an example. There is a small change in your application, and your team wants to run only smoke test cases or only limited test cases. So herein this grouping feature will be very helpful for you if you have already defined the test cases and segregated into smoke, sanity and regression. So whichever request came in, so as per it you can execute those test cases. Next is version control. So Git or SVN, whichever version control you are using to manage your code, tell them that we are using Git to manage our code. Next is Jenkins to achieve continuous testing. Further, you can explain how you are triggering your test cases in Jenkins, either daily at specific time, or next can be when developers checks in code. So yep. So guys, that's all about explanation of framework in an interview. I hope it will help you.
The first OOPS concept which we are going to discuss is polymorphism. As you know, we can achieve polymorphism in Java either by using method overloading or by method overriding. Now let us see how we can utilize method overloading. That is how we can explain to the interview that how we have used method overloading in our automation framework. Now when you explain method overloading, you can tell interview like, I have created some reusable classes in my automation project where I use the Selenium inbuilt wait methods, and I created the overloaded methods to use them in my project wherever required. For example, I created explicit overloaded methods where I was passing in one method, I was passing xpath as an argument, that is string argument. In another method, the overloading method, I was passing the web element as the argument. Same way you can also explain example using frames where you have created your own methods utilizing the Selenium frames handling, and you were passing the arguments as per your requirements so that you can use them in your automation project. Now let us see how we can explain this with the real example. So this is my automation project, okay, and in my project I am having this weight class, which is a reusable class, okay, and in this weight class I am having a overloaded method which is explicit weight click, okay, and in this explicit weight click, in one method I am passing web element argument type, and in another I am passing string as a argument type, okay, and based on my requirement I can call this method in my project wherever required. For example, if I want to wait for the clickability of an element based on the web element passed, then I will call this method. If I want to wait on the clickability of element on the basis of xpath locator, then I will pass the xpath here, okay, so I can call either of these as per my requirement. Similarly, as my application was having lot of frames in it, so I created this class where I have overloaded the frame methods, okay, like in one switch frame method I am passing int id, which is id of the frame, and in another switch frame I am passing the name of the frame, and in the third switch frame method I am passing the element, okay. So based on my requirement, whatever the attribute of a frame I want to use, I will call any of these methods. So this is how you can explain the method overloading in Java automation framework. Now the next way to achieve polymorphism is method overriding. So when you are explaining method overriding usage in your automation framework, try to give examples specific to your application. For example, in my case, I am giving the example of getting the driver get driver method where I'm launching my browser, and based on my one of my test requirement, I am overriding that method in my test class so that I can launch my browser in different resolution. Now let us see the example. Now in this example, as I mentioned, this is my base class getDriver method where I'm basically creating my WebDriver instance, okay, based on my browser, okay, and then I'm launching the URL, okay. Now in my test class, I was having a separate requirement where I have to launch my browser like in a little bit less resolution, okay. So for that I have overwritten this base class getDriver method in my test class. So now let us see. So this is my test class, okay, and here if you see, like here I have overwritten this getDriver method, okay, and I'm setting the resolution, whatever the resolution in which I want to launch my browser. So this is how I have overridden my base class method in my test class, and this is how you can give some examples specific to your application to explain the overriding in Java in your automation framework. The next OOPS concept to explain is encapsulation. So encapsulation in Java is simply means like wrapping up of data and the methods working on that data into a single unit, which is our class. So basically in your automation framework, every page class, test class or other classes are example of your encapsulation. For example, in your page class, you are having all the locators, fields, and the methods working on those fields wrapped up in a single unit, which is your page class. So now let us see the real example to explain what is encapsulation in automation framework. So in this example, you can see this is my page class, one of my page class where I'm having the objects created, that is locators created, and the methods which is working on those locators are also created in this single class. So this is the example of my encapsulation, like within a single class I'm having all the data and the methods working on that data encapsulated in a single unit. Now the next OOPS concept in the list is abstraction. So as you know, we can achieve abstraction in Java either by using interfaces or the abstract classes. So it's not mandatory like you have to explain both of these, like based on your project, based on your automation framework, you can explain any of these. So the very simple example will be the use of interfaces by taking the classic example of WebDriver interface. As we all know, WebDriver is an interface, so you can explain like you have used WebDriver driver equal to new Chrome driver, Firefox driver, whatever it is, and then you can explain like this is how I have used interfaces in my automation framework. Now let us see the real example. Now in this example, as you can see, this is my base class. Okay, and in my base class I am basically creating the driver instance, WebDriver instance, and then I'm launching the web browser URL. Okay, and in this example you can see this is my WebDriver interface, and these are my Chrome driver and Edge driver classes based on the browsers on which you are working. So you can basically explain this overall statement like WebDriver is an interface and Chrome driver is a class where we are implementing the methods defined in your WebDriver interface as per my browser, like Chrome browser or the Edge browser or Internet Explorer browser. Okay, so you can explain this example for the abstraction. Now the last OOPS concept to discuss is inheritance. As you know, inheritance simply means like reusing the parent class properties into your child classes. Okay, and so for this you can explain like I am having one base class which I have extended in all of my page classes or test classes so that I can reuse its properties in whatever the class I want to use. So this is how you can explain the inheritance usage in your automation framework. Now let us see it with the example. Now to explain this, like in my automation framework, this is my base class, okay, where I am basically creating the WebDriver instance and launching the URL. And these are my test classes, and I'm almost extending this base class in almost every test class. Okay, for example, if I open this handle frame, you can see I have extended the base class so that I can reuse its inbuilt methods or properties wherever required in my test class. Okay, so this is how you can explain like how you have achieved inheritance in your automation framework. Now let us understand the um, overall execution of this framework, like how exactly it is working. So in my base class, as I mentioned, I have created the WebDriver instance and launched the URL, and in my test classes I am basically calling the methods which are present in my page classes specific to my page. Whatever page class method I want to call, I am calling those page class methods in my test case. Okay, and after that in my page class methods I am creating the overall uh, things specific to my page, like the all the objects specific to my page are present there, all the methods specific to my page are present there. Okay, and also in my page classes I'm making use of the reusable classes. For example, like I have called this reusable overloaded method switch frame. Okay, from my reusable class into my page class. So this is overall structure, and at the end I can execute this method, this particular test case from my main class. So if I execute this, so this is a very small example of an automation framework. This is not the complete automation framework that we will cover in our automation framework series, how to create the automation framework and how you can explain it. So here in this example, it is simply launching the URL, handling the frame, entering some text, and then cleaning the session. So I hope you guys are able to understand how you can explain the OOPS concepts in your automation framework, how you have used them in your automation framework. In case of any questions or queries, please let us know over the video comments. We will try our best to answer those queries. Thank you.
Hi guys, this is Jatin from Testing Gyan. So we are back with another important interview questions, that why in base class of our framework we write Webdriver driver is equals to new Chrome driver and not Chrome driver is equals to new Chrome driver. So let's discuss each and every permutation and combination in this video. So let's start. So guys, let's discuss why we write Webdriver driver is equals to new Chrome driver. Now there can be three ways to write it. First is Webdriver driver equal to new WebDriver. Second one is Chrome driver is equals to new Chrome driver, and third one is Webdriver driver is equals to new Chrome driver. So we have to explain each way, which is right, which is wrong. So let's see how you will answer it in interview. Let's start with first one. Why we don't write Webdriver driver is equals to new WebDriver. Since WebDriver is an interface, and in Java it is not possible to create an instance of interface, hence we cannot write WebDriver driver is equals to new WebDriver. Move on to explaining about Chrome driver is equals to new Chrome driver and why it is not preferable. So, firstly, this is correct statement since Chrome driver is a class and we can create objects from it. But why don't we prefer writing this way is because we don't want to limit our testing to only Chrome browser and we don't want to declare multiple instances of driver. Hence, we don't prefer this way. And lastly, this is the all the above reason is the reason why we write Webdriver is equals to new Chrome driver. If you explain this way, I am sure interviewer will be convinced that you have knowledge on Selenium concepts as well as on Java concepts.
By now, I'm sure you all know how to handle different type of web elements in Selenium such as button, link, text box, etc. In this video, we are going to discuss about a very important web element which in my experience is the most commonly asked question in interviews and people normally find it difficult to answer, and that web element is web table. So now let us see how we can handle web tables in Selenium. Let us first understand what is a web table. So web table is a table on a web page. That is, your data is being represented in form of tabular format with the help of rows and columns where each cell is represented by some row number and the column number. So in Selenium, web table is simply a web element and we will be performing the web element functions in order to access the content of that table. Now let us see what are the different type of tags which are important to understand about the web table. So the major web table tags are table, which defines the table that this is a web table in the web page. Then the th tag, which represent the header row of a web table. Then tr tag, which represent the normal rows of the web table, and that is the rows which are having some data in them. And then the td tag represent the columns of the web table. Now, there are two types of web tables majorly, which are static and dynamic. So, as the name suggests, static tables are the tables where the data remains constant, that is, it's not going to change anything. So, we can simply access the content of this web table by using the row number and the column number because rows and columns are fixed here. Then comes the dynamic tables. So dynamic web table are something where the content of the web table keeps on changing. Okay, so that is number of rows and columns can also vary and the content of the web table can also vary. Now let us see how we can do it with the help of a practical example. Now before we look at the code, so this is a sample web table which I found over the web, which we will be working in our example. So this is a web table. Here the first row, this particular row is representing the headers, column headers basically, and this row is also representing the headers for each row. Okay, and these are the columns basically, uh, country, city, height, build, rank, and this one. Okay, and these are the data present in the columns and the at the particular row number. Now let us see how we can handle this with the help of Selenium. Okay. So as you can see, this is my web table class where I have done the basic setup like launching the Chrome browser and then initializing the web elements and all everything. Okay. Now, in order to access the data of a particular cell, we should know the row number and the column number. Okay. Now, if my table is static, then I can simply give the row number and column number in my X path. As you can see, this is my X path here. Okay, where I have parameterized the row number and column number, which I will be passing with the help of my function. So I am accessing the particular cell's content with the help of the row number and the column number. Okay, that is, if I want to access this cell's data, then my row number will be 3 and my column number will be 2. Okay, because this is my second column and third row. So same way, what I'm doing, I have prepared the XPath using the row number and column number, and then I am simply getting the text of that particular web element. Okay, because in web table every row, column, table itself are web elements only, so we will be using the web element functions here. Okay. So if I run this particular code here, okay, you can see I am calling the function with different row and column numbers. Okay, so let me run this and later we can verify. Okay, so this is how you will be handling the static web table, where you know that like my this data is present on this row and this column. So you can simply give the row and column numbers. So here you can see like all the cell values are being printed. So cell value 2 for that is row 2 column 2 is mecha. So if I see row 2 and column 2 is mecha, and then row 3 column 2 is the. So if I see row 2, sorry, row 3 column 2, row 3 and column 2 is the happy. So this way you can access the content of a static web table. Now let us see how we can handle the dynamic web tables. So in order to handle the dynamic web tables, like where rows and columns can change, we will first find the count of the rows which are at present on that web table and the columns. So how we can do that? I have simply prepared a generic XPath for my rows. If you see here, if I inspect here, okay, if I paste this XPath here, so you can see this particular XPath is representing all the rows of this particular web table. So using this generic XPath, what I am doing, I am using the find elements function, where I am using the row XPath and I am storing all the rows data into this particular row list. Okay, and then later on I am finding the size of this list, which will give me the total number of rows present in my web table. Similarly, I am doing it for my columns. So I got the total number of rows present in my web table and the total number of columns present in my web table. Now in order to handle something, like for example I want to access some data of my particular row and column, I got the total number of rows and columns, but in order to get the specific content, now I should have some identifier kind of thing, like I should have some data which I should know in order to access the other content. For example, uh, here in this function I'm giving the country, like country is known to me, I know I want to find out the data of the row where country is this. Okay, so I'm just passing on the country. Okay, and then I am applying the loops, which these loops, the first loop is for the rows and the second loop is for the columns. So both of these loops are traversing over the complete table. Okay, and you can see this is my cell XPath. Okay, that is the XPath which is representing the data of each and every cell. Okay, so this cell is being represented by some row and column. So you can see I have parameterized the row and the column which are being passed from these loops. Okay, so that way I am traversing through the whole web table, and as soon as I am finding the country which I have passed from this function, you can see I am storing the row number and column number in the variables, and then I'm breaking off the loop. I'm coming out of this loop. Okay, that is I got the particular row and column number. Then later on, based on that row and column number, I can access the data of that particular row with of any column. So here you can see like I have found the row and column number, printed out them, and then after that I have prepared a XPath for the rank. Okay, where I'm using this row and column number. Okay, and then I'm accessing the data of this particular column using the row number and column number which I found using the country name. Okay, so if you see here, then later on I'm printing the rank of that particular country. So if you see, so this is my dynamic web table handling, where I don't know where on what row, what column my particular data will be present. So I'm using the list, like find elements function, and storing the data into the list, and then I'm getting the size of that list to get the row and column number, and then I'm traversing through the whole web table to find out that particular content. So if I run this, let me comment these out now. So I'm giving the country name as Taiwan. I want the rank of that country. I don't know where exactly this country will be present. So using my dynamic web table implementation, it will find out. So you can see it has found out that my country Taiwan is present on third row and column 1. which is third row, 1 2 3, and column 1. So you can see Taiwan, and then using the same XPath, like same row number and column number, I'm fetching out the rank. So rank should be 3. So you can see rank is 3. So this way you can handle the dynamic web tables. I hope you guys are able to understand. In case you have any questions, please let us know over the video comments. Thank you.
So let's see how you will explain the difference between find element and find elements to the interviewer. Explain about find element first. So find element method is used to access a single web element on a page. It returns the first matching element and its return type is web element. It throws a no such element exception when there is no element on the web page corresponding to the locator which we have passed. And afterwards explain about find elements. So find elements method returns the list of all the matching element on the page. The find elements method returns an empty list when the element is not available or does not exist on the page. So guys, I am sure if you answer like this, you will get a brownie points from the interviewer since you have explained the difference very clearly.
When it is asked what is the difference between driver.close and driver.quit command, we can simply tell the interviewer that driver.close command closes the browser window which is currently in focus, and driver.quit command closes all the opened browser sessions which are even not in focus. All the running sessions which are opened by the WebDriver instance will be closed. Now let us see this with the help of a practical example. So here you can see, like, I have created a close and quit class where I'm doing the initial setup of launching a URL, then initializing my web elements, launching the Chrome browser and all. Okay, and this is my close method and this is my quit method. Okay, now if I first I will show you if I am running the close method, and you can see in close method I'm simply calling driver.close, and in quit I'm calling driver.quit, and I'm opening two browser windows just to see the difference. So first browser window is google.com and second is yahoo.com. So you can see when I'm running the driver.close command, it is just closing the latest open browser window which was currently in focus, which was yahoo.com. Now let us see the behavior of the quit command. To do that, I'm calling my quit method, and you can see in quit method I'm launching the yahoo.com, and initially in constructor I'm launching the google.com. Okay, and my quit command is simply called to see the difference. So let's see. So driver.quit should close all the open sessions. So it has launched the google.com. It's launching the yahoo.com. And you can see it has closed both the browser windows. So this is the basic difference between quit and close. I hope you guys are able to understand. In case of any questions, please let us know about the video comments. Thank you. When an interviewer asks, like, identify the broken links from the given web page, then we have to basically elaborate the steps which we are going to perform in order to identify the broken links from the given web page. We can start like, first of all, we will identify a web locator using which we will find out all the elements which are holding the URL property in them. Okay, so once it is done, then we will use the find elements function of the Selenium, and we will store all those web elements in a list. After that, we will start traversing through that web elements list, and we will use the appropriate attribute to find the URL, such as href attribute. Okay, once it is done, then we will create a HTTP URL connection using Java embed libraries, and then we will connect to that particular extracted URL. After the connection, we will find out the response code which we will get after hitting that URL. Like, is it throwing 200? That means the link is valid. Or is it throwing something like 400, 401? That means link is not working. So now let us see with the real example how exactly we are going to do this. So here in my broken links class, I am doing first the basic setup, which is launching the Chrome and initializing my web elements and launching the URL. Okay, so here is the method where I'm doing the all the steps which I just mentioned before in order to find out the broken links. So first I identified the web element using the tag name A. Okay, so we can use any property, any locator which will give us the all the URLs of that particular web page. Once it is done, you can see I have created the list of web element which is links. Then I have started traversing over that list. Okay, and then using the href attribute I am finding out the URL of every web element. Okay, once it is done, it's quite possible that the web element which we have identified is not having any URL in it. So to handle that, we have applied this condition, okay, where if URL is null or it is empty, then in that case it will simply print in the log and continue to the next step. Okay, once it is done, then we have established a HTTP URL connection where I am first connecting to the extracted URL and then I am getting the response code. Okay, this is basically an API operation. Once it is done, if my response code is something like 400, 401, right, then I'm saying the link is broken. If my response code is not in the 400 series or 500 series, then I'm simply saying link is valid, which is 200. Okay, and after you can specifically mention like if response code is equal to 200, then only your link is said to be a valid link. And here I'm handling the malformed URL because it is also possible the element which we have identified is not having the URL in that href property, it is having some text. Okay, so to handle such situation so that our code do not stop or something, we have applied this malformed URL exception. Now let us see the working of this code. So it has launched the URL. Now let's see what exactly is happening in the logs. So here you can see like it is going through the URL of every identified web element and it is saying is a valid link, is a valid link. That is most of the links are working. If there's any not valid link, we will see that in logs, or if there is any value which is not exactly a URL, we will also see that in the logs. We will get the exception for that. So here you can see like the code has gone through every URL in the web page and most of the URLs are valid link. There are few values which are not exactly the URL like telephone number and this mail. Okay, so for these we got the malformed URL exception because these are not the URLs, but you can see like it continued, it didn't stop, it went to the next element as well. So this is how exactly we can explain and show to the interviewer like how to identify the broken links from a given web page. I hope you guys are able to understand. In case of any questions, please let us know over the video comments. We will try our best to answer those queries. Thank you. Hi guys, this is Tarun from Testing Gyan. In our this video, we will discuss about very commonly asked Selenium exceptions. We will see how these exceptions can occur and then we will discuss how we can resolve these exceptions. So let us start. The first exception in the list is stale element reference exception. Stale simply means something which is no longer fresh or is decayed. And in Selenium, stale element exception can occur when the referred web element is no longer attached to the DOM or is deleted completely. Now to understand more on this, I am taking one example. So in my example, what I'm doing, I'm navigating to my web application and then I'm trying to perform action on this multi-select field. Okay. So this field, in this field, I can select multiple options like this. with one click. Okay, and to reproduce the stale element exception, what I'm doing, first of all, I'm storing all of these elements, all of these options in a list of web element using driver.find elements. Okay, and then every time, in depending on the number of elements which are there in the list, I'm iterating over the each element using a for loop, and then every time I'm trying to reach the first option of the list, which is in the list it will be the at the 0th index. Okay, so what happens, like when I select this element, okay, in my first iteration this element will be selected, and in my second iteration when I try to reach again to the first element of the list, it will give me the stale element reference exception, because the DOM structure in the backend is changed. The element once I selected is being deleted. Okay, so now let us see. So here in the code, this part is where I'm doing the login, and this part where I'm doing the navigation to the object. Okay, and in this part I am storing all the options of the multi-select list in the list of web element. Okay, then here I'm trying to iterate over all of those options, and then I'm trying to select the first option of the list. So let me run this code. So I'm logged into the application now. Now it's going to the account object, and in the new account, and then it is reaching to the multi-select field. So you can see it has selected the first option, and right after that I got the stale element reference exception, because in my next iteration the element which I was referring is lost, is deleted. Okay, so this is a scenario, one of the scenarios when we can get a stale element exception. Okay, to handle stale element exception there are few options. The first very common solution is we can refresh the web page, and then we can try to reach the web element again. The second option is sometime it is because of the weights as well, so we have to implement the weights accordingly. And then the third option is like we can use the try catch, so that our execution is not blocked, it catches the exception and moves forward. After this, the next exception in the list is no such element exception. This is also a very common exception. So this exception can occur for the reasons like when the locator of the web element is somehow wrongly mapped, or it is changed. Okay, or your page is not loaded completely and the element is still not loaded in the DOM. Okay, in such scenarios you will get no such element exception, which simply means the element which you are trying to reach is not present in the web page. Okay, so to reproduce this exception, so what I'm doing, I have mapped this search box field wrongly here. Okay, the locator of the field is wrong here right now. So if I try to run this code, okay, so first let me call this function, which is no such element exception. Okay, now let me run this. So as the locator of the element is wrongly mapped, I should get the no such element exception in this case. So you can see no such element exception. So to resolve this, what I will do, I will check first of all, I will check my locator and I will check if there is some kind of weight issues. Okay. So now you can see in this case action is performed after changing the locator of the web element. So this is how we can handle the no such element exception. Now the last exception in the list is time out exception. So this exception can occur for reason like we are trying to reach an web element, and in order to reach that web element we have implemented some wait. Okay, and within that time frame if element is not visible or is not present, then we will get the timeout exception. So to reproduce this exception, I am using this code here where I am trying to wait for the element. Okay, wait for the clickability of the element for some time. Okay, and then I'm trying to click on that web element. So if I run this code now, first of all let me call this function. Okay, so it waited for the web element, and then within the time frame that element is not present. Actually this element, this button element is hidden in this case. So in this case I will always get the timeout exception whether I'm giving 100 seconds or 200 seconds because the element is hidden. Okay, so I'm getting the timeout exception in this case. So in order to handle this exception, simply like what you can do, if you have to bypass this exception or any other exception, we can always use the try catch, that is the basic exception handling in Java. And then you can check out the web element, is it correctly mapped. The other thing which you can do is like you can increase the timeout value or the wait value so that maybe that element is taking some time. You can implement fluent waits. Okay, so these kind of solutions you can implement in order to handle the timeout exception. So this was all about exceptions, some very basic exceptions. So in case you have any questions, please let us know over the video comments. We will try our best to answer those queries. Thank you.
Hello everyone, this is Jatin from Testing Gyan. So we are back with another interview question, that is what is difference between driver.get and driver.navigate. So let's see how you will answer this in an interview. So start by saying there are two major differences between driver.get and driver.navigate. Explain the first one. So first one is get is responsible for loading the page and it waits until the page has finished loading. And once it is finished loading, then only it will perform the next action. While the navigate method is only responsible for redirecting the page and then returning immediately, meaning it will not wait for page to finish loading before performing the next action. Move on to explain the second difference. So get method cannot track the history of browser, meaning we cannot go forward or backward using the get method, while navigate method tracks the browser history and can perform back and forth in the browser. Let's see live example now. Let me show you for get first. Let's open google.com. Let me run this. So it has successfully opened the google.com, and after it I want to write something here. So let me get XPath for this. Driver dot find element by dot XPath and then the XPath which I have written and then send keys. Hello. Let me run this. So you see it has opened google.com successfully and typed hello over here. Now, if your website is not as light as Google or it takes time to load, be it any reason, be it if you are connected to VPN or your network connection is slow, then if you have used driver.navigate.to instead of driver.get, your script would have turned into a failure because it would have not wait for website to load that page. It would have moved to next step. That is the major reason we use a driver.get instead of driver.navigate.to. I hope the first difference is clear. Let's move on to second difference. Let me close this. Let me comment this. And after this, let me navigate to amazon.com. Navigate.to. So you see that if I type driver.get over here, I'm not getting any method to move forward or to move backward. While if I type driver.navigate, I'm getting both the methods, back as well as forward. So let me use this backward method just to show you guys that it will move back to the URL which was there previously. Let me apply some weight over here just to make sure that it is performing it accurately. That's 2-second wait. Let me execute it. So you see it has opened google.com, navigated to amazon.in, and then again moved back to google.com. So I hope second difference is also clear. If you have any doubt in this question, then you can comment in this video and we'll try our best to resolve that. Thank you. Make sure to like, share and subscribe to our channel.